My fellow prophecy student, greetings. I am very happy to share with you what I consider to be the simplest principle in prophecy study. It is a principle that every Bible student is well aware of, yet almost no one seems to be applying it in their study. It is one thing to know a principle, but when you know the principle and not applying it, it is just as good as not knowing the principle at all. There is something going on in the study of end-time prophecy today that is of concern to me. In the interpretation of end-time Bible prophecy, many even among the most seasoned expert theologians don't seem to get the picture. It is a bit difficult to say whether the perception of intellectual superiority has anything to do with it, but what is certain is that a lot of us seem to think that the study of Bible prophecy is more about the quality of our theological analysis and less about following the interpretations God provides in His Word. What I mean by this is that some of us have become so caught up with wanting to find an interpretation for everything that even in the very instruction that the Lord gives in solving Bible prophecy, we tend to see some hidden meaning beyond the instruction given. And did you know that this very notion has led some to believe that the forbidden fruit that Eve ate is not a literal fruit? And please, don't ask me what the interpretation is. Understanding the principle of prophecy interpretation is very vital. These principles of prophecy interpretation are covered comprehensively in the end-time prophecy course. At the end of this video, I will tell you where you can get a free download of a book entitled 7 Steps to Becoming an End-Time Prophecy Expert in 48 Hours. In all the prophecy presentation I listen to, whether it be in a sermon, a blog article, or a video post on YouTube, there seems to be a common problem. Here is the problem. They all seem to have a difficulty in differentiating what must be treated as a symbol from what must be taken literally. As prophecy students, we are conditioned to think that the book of Revelation is a world of symbolism, that almost nothing should be taken for its obvious meaning. Because of this, we tend to see a coded meaning in everything we read. Here is the worst problem. When we think along this line, we are setting ourselves up for speculation and private interpretation. And here's why. If we are programmed to see everything as a symbol in the book of Revelation, the next step would inevitably be to identify the meaning for everything we consider as a symbol in the Bible. And if we cannot find a Bible-based interpretation for that element we treat as a symbol, the next step is to conjure up a meaning that fits our peculiar point of view. It's quite natural. Sounds familiar? Well, here's the reason why it keeps happening. We are simply not being careful in following God's instructions in the interpretation of symbolic prophecies. And even though it seems like a simple matter, it is one of the biggest problems in the interpretation of the Bible in general and end-time prophecy in particular. When we have this corrected, more than half our problems with interpreting Bible prophecy will be solved. It is such a pity that most people who take an interest in the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation do not seem to put a very high premium on the level of precision with which the Lord gives His instructions. We do not seem to believe that God is the kind of person who says what He means and means what He says. This attitude toward God's word reminds me of the case of Abraham when God made a promise to him that he will have a son in his old age. At the time when God made the promise, Sarah, his wife, was barren and without hope of having any children. In light of their present situation, Abraham and Sarah decided that this prophecy could not mean exactly what it says, and so they attempted to put a spin on what God says to suit their own beliefs. They reasoned among themselves that the promise of God must have meant that Hagar is the one who is going to have the seed for us. Thus they went ahead and did what they thought best according to their interpretation of God's promise. As a result of their own conjecture, Ishmael came forth, and the problem that came as a consequence convinced Abraham and his wife that this was not what God intended. Many of us are doing the same thing today, in that we tend to interpret the prophecies according to arguments popularized by so-called conventional wisdom. Whenever I think about speculations in the interpretation of end-time Bible prophecy, two shining examples would come to mind. They are the mark of the beast and the image of the beast. The flawed deductions on the mark of the beast stem from a faulty premise, and the premise is, because the book of Revelation is a world of symbolism, nothing should be taken literally. And if you think this is ridiculous, I have personally heard one brother with the argument that the fire and brimstone mentioned in Revelation 19 and 20 are not literal. When we treat a certain view as a premise, it is going to determine how we interpret other things that are built on that perception. Therefore, if the premise is not solid enough for a foundation, everything that is built on it will collapse. So here is where the argument leads. If the book of Revelation is perceived as a book of symbols, it is inevitable that the mark of the beast will be treated as a symbol of something, despite the fact that the Bible does not provide a meaning for that supposed symbol. Whatever your interpretation, it cannot be said that you get it from the Bible, because there is none. Some people interpret the mark of the beast as a symbol of greed. Others say it is a symbol of the evil economic system. I heard one brother contending that it might be homosexuality, while other suggestions have it that it's a false day of worship. The reason why we have so many different interpretations of something the Bible does not interpret is because people are governed by the perception that because Revelation is a book of symbols, it is wrong to take its prophecy literally. Some of these interpretations may have their place as secondary applications pertaining to the mark of the beast, but none of them can be promoted as established interpretation in the scriptures. The fact is, the Bible is very clear about how we should view these elements. First, to begin with, we should not attempt to interpret anything the scriptures do not interpret. From what the prophet John says, he saw a mark being placed in the foreheads and right hands of people. Are we to believe that what John saw is not a literal event to be fulfilled as he saw it? The image of the beast, likewise, is said to be a symbol of something other than its obvious meaning. The view I am most familiar with is the union of church and state. But there are other views such as the papacy, which is said to be the image of the Roman Empire, and the latest I am now hearing is that it is the United Nations. According to the scriptures, the image of the beast is something that will be worshipped by many people in the last days. Why should we find it difficult to understand and accept? Are we not familiar with image worship in the Bible? The practice of trying to symbolize and interpret something that the Bible does not interpret only mystifies that which is made plain. The rule we should apply in this respect is to take everything for their obvious meaning unless a symbol is employed. Where a symbol is introduced, the Bible must be allowed to interpret the symbol. God never intended Bible prophecy to be so difficult and complicated as it is now being made out to be. We must be reminded, however, that Satan has an interest in keeping us in ignorance of the truth. And that's the reason why we have so many people writing articles and posting videos on YouTube telling us that the mark of the beast is the RFID chip and Barack Obama is the Antichrist. All of a sudden, everybody becomes a prophecy interpreter. And this is what made YouTube almost the place to stay away from if you want to learn the truth. In all his instructions, it is always God's intention to make everything so plain that the wayfaring men, though fools, shall not err therein. Thanks for taking the time out to watch this video. I hope you have learned something. Click on the link below and go to my Facebook page. You will then be taken to the page where you can download the 7 steps to becoming an end-time prophecy expert in 48 hours. And please, don't forget, click the like button. Again, thanks for watching.